Hi, in this video we'll start to introduce the diesel engine. So to do that we'll look at a couple video clips. This first video clip is produced by Shell. It's a video from the 1950s, so an older video that shows the history of the diesel engine. Now when you watch this video, I want you to consider two questions. The first question is, how does a diesel engine differ from a normal spark ignition engine? And secondly, I want you to consider, how is the fuel ignited in a diesel engine?
The 19th century saw enormous progress in the development of heat engines of all kinds, and towards its close, there were four main types in general use. The oil engine with hot bulb vaporizer, the steam engine, which was still considered supreme for a wide variety of uses, the gas engine for stationary power plants, and the rapidly improving gasoline engine. All these engines worked on the same basic principle of turning heat into work. But in each case, the amount of heat turned into work was small. The efficiency was low. 6% for the average steam engine. 10% for the oil engine. 17% for the gas engine. And 12% for the gasoline engine. Looking at these facts, Rudolf Diesel was certain that it should be possible to build an engine with a very much higher efficiency. From the start, he was convinced of four things. He must get away from the steam engine entirely. Combustion must take place inside the cylinder. Air, not steam, must be the working medium. And finally, the air must be highly compressed so as to permit the greatest possible expansion. He remembered the pneumatic match, or fire piston. A small cylinder, usually made of wood or glass, into which a closely fitting piston or plunger could be inserted. The head of the piston was recessed so as to hold a piece of dry tinder. When the air in the cylinder was highly compressed, it became so hot as to cause the tinder to ignite. The fire piston gave a clue to a practical means of securing combustion inside the cylinder. Compression, ignition. Diesel adapted this principle to the internal combustion engine and described the cycle for the first time in 1892. A downward stroke of the piston. Pure air is sucked into the cylinder. The air is then compressed to the point where it reaches the temperature necessary for combustion. Fuel is introduced into the compressed air. Owing to the high temperature, it takes fire and produces heat, which is turned into work. During the fourth stroke, the spent gases are forced out of the cylinder. By 1894, a completely new and redesigned engine had been built, and preparations were complete for the first trial run. Ignition was a practical way of securing combustion, and an engine could be made to work on this cycle. By 1897, the first reliable engine had completed its tests. Limitations in engineering methods had made some modifications necessary. Nevertheless, the engine had an efficiency of 27%, far higher than any other engine of the day.
So there we saw the development of the diesel engine. We saw that diesel engines are compression-ignition engines, and that diesel engines are more efficient than a spark-ignition engine. The next video clip we'll look at is from Honda, looking at one of their diesel engines. 3 questions as we watch this video. First one is, what technology is used to allow the engine to start up in low temperatures? Second question is, what compression ratios do we see in a diesel engine, and how do these compare to the spark ignition engines we looked at last week? The third question is, how do we ensure that the fuel and air are mixed together in the combustion chamber?
Honda's new diesel engine, the 2.2-litre ICTDI, applies advanced intelligent combustion control, adjusting engine speed and load to obtain optimum combustion under all driving conditions. The ICTDI delivers outstanding performance in fuel economy, low emissions, output, torque and quiet operation. The new engine combines a newly redesigned combustion chamber and variable intake swirl to ensure broad diffusion of the injected fuel. The optimized shape of the combustion chamber's cavities and lips helps disperse the fuel vertically, while the swirl created on the intake stroke promotes horizontal dispersion. Fuel is efficiently spread throughout the combustion chamber. Further, a ceramic glow plug and other innovations greatly improve low-temperature combustion stability, permitting the use of a low compression ratio of 16.7 to 1. Appropriate moderation of the combustion pressure reduces friction, vibration and noise. Honda has also adapted a number of other leading-edge technologies to achieve advanced combustion control. The ICTDI is fitted with a continuously variable swirl control valve at the intake manifold chamber to provide smoothly graded control over the swirl ratio. In situations where a high swirl is called for, a valve closes to limit the volume of air intake in the secondary port. This difference in the intake volume between the two ports generates a high swirl in the cylinder. Under conditions where a low swirl ratio is more appropriate, the valve opens wide, reducing the difference in intake volume between the two ports to lower the swirl ratio. The continuously variable swirl control valve thus ensures optimum matching of swirl ratio with engine speed and load, significantly contributing to fuel consistency. Another innovation that ensures lower intake resistance and aids in more efficient swirl generation is the tangential intake port.
We heard about glow plugs in that video. Glow plugs are used to start up in cold temperatures, so the glow plug will heat up the air before the intake so that the engine can still start up when it's minus 20 degrees outside. We heard that diesel engines have much higher compression ratios than a spark ignition engine. This is why a diesel engine is much more efficient than a gasoline engine typically. Because diesel burns slower, and because we have direct fuel injection, that means we don't have to worry about engine knocking the same way we do in a gasoline engine.